All right, it is time to start looking at some examples and then having you try some out on your own. We're going to use a few different resources. One of them, you need your math notebook, obviously. You should have already taken notes, and that's when the graphing paper is really going to come into handy. So this is the first example. We're going to graph the equation 4/5 x plus 2. Remember that m, this is the slope-intercept form of an equation, where m tells us the slope and b tells us the y-intercept. So step one is we place a point at the y-intercept. Since it's +2, it's going to cross the y-axis at +2. So that's where we start. From there, we're going to apply our slope. Our slope is a +4/5 x. So we're rising 4 and we're moving to the right 5 units. So we can see that here. Make sure your graph is labeled in, each line is 1 unit, because that makes a difference. So, and it is in this one, we go up 4 and over 5. And here's our next point. Remember, we only need 2 points in order to connect the line, making a straight line. And there's our graph. Let's check this in Desmos. So how we're going to do this is, and you guys, I want you doing this too. You're going to use Desmos a lot now, okay? A lot, all while we're graphing. So our line was y equals 4/5 x. And how you do this in Desmos is if you just hit the side slash button next to shift, it'll automatically put it into a fraction. And then if you arrow over 1, it'll get you out of the fraction, and then you can put the x there. And then shift plus and 5. No, 2. Sorry, 2. So from here, you can actually move the graph around. Just click on it and hold it down and move. This is the same graph we saw in the Nearpod. It crosses the y-axis at 2, and the next point where the line crosses right at an intersection of grid lines is up. This is really zoomed in, guys. So here's another thing you can do. Come over here, because I don't want you to get confused and just count up and over. I mean, it still works. This is up 4 and over 5. But you can zoom out, click this minus button up here, and then it's set up where each line is a unit. So it goes up 4 over 5, and here's that next point at 5 and 6, just like our graph showed on the Nearpod. So it's a really nice tool to have, to always check your graphs and make sure that you're graphing correctly. Okay, so now I want you to try this, and I'll write this down for you. I want you to graph -3, I don't know why I'm using this, hold on a second. I have a better tool here. -3/4 x plus 5. So this is y equals -3/4 x plus 5. And you should already be knowing and thinking about the fact that this is a negative slope. So instead of going uphill when we read it right to, or left to right, your graph should be going downhill. And it's crossing the y-axis at 5. So I want you to graph that in your notebook. So you'll just need quickly sketch, the y and x axes. This is the y also. And then just use your lines to graph it. Then, and you can also go into Desmos and check your work. Really easy. So once you're done graphing, go into Desmos and check it. Pause the video. Okay, so if you're ready, you've already checked your graph. It should look like this. So it crossed at -5 on the y-axis, and then you applied the slope going down 3/4. And this is your next point at 4 and -8. Let's put this in here. Y equals -3/4 x plus 5. Oh, this was a -5. That's okay. We'll just change it. I probably had you right. I probably wrote +5, but here's another example of how it's, if it's -5, it just starts at -5 on the y-axis. Okay, let's look at another thing here. So what do the numbers represent in a linear equation in slope-intercept form? We know this, right? M is the slope, B is the y-intercept. Here's another one. We're going to identify the y-intercept. Now we're just looking at the graph and we have to write the equation. So we see the y-intercept is at 1. So we know it's going to be +1. Okay, and we know it's y equals over here. What we need to find now is the slope. So we start at the y-intercept and we see what we're doing. Are we moving down? Yes, it's a negative going downhill. So we know it's going to be a negative slope. How many units? Let's count. 1, 2, 3. So down 3 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. So this graph is y equals -3/4 x plus 1. That's it. Okay, so I want you to try one now. How do I want to do this? Let's see. I'm going to have you just kind of watch my graph here. So this is like if you were having to sketch it in your book. I'm going to do it as straight as possible. This one, I'm just going to label as evenly as I can, trying to be precise. This one is going to have a point here. So you're already thinking about what is the y-intercept, and from there, here's the next point. And you can attempt to make a straight line with these points like that. Okay, so you're going to write what the equation is for this graph, and then just pause it for a minute and check it on the next screen. Okay, so if you put y equals 2/3 x minus 2, good job. You can see that we had a y-intercept at -2. From there, it was up 2/3. That's a positive slope, so it's going uphill. Now let's look at how we can figure out the equation based off of just knowing 2 points on the line. Remember, our slope formula is the change in the y values divided by the change in the x values. And you need to pick the second y and second x first. So what that means is you're given 2 points. This is x1, this is y1. Again, this is y1. This is x2, y2. It just means it's the second set of values. This is the first set of values. So we plug these in, okay? So we have y2 first minus y1, which is 4. Now, guys, if this was a -4, you would write this as -2 minus -4. And if you remember, that actually means -2 plus 4. So the change here would be 2. Okay. But it's a positive 4, and the formula calls for a subtraction in between. It's the difference. So that's why this is -6. And then over here, here's an example. It's -3 minus -1 minus -3, which is actually -1 plus 3, and that's why we get 2. -6 divided by 2 is -3. So this is the slope, because this can be simplified. You could still go down 6 and over 2, but you're also going to see that it crosses at an intersection at -3 over 1. So remember, our rise over run, if there's no number for the whole number, it's just a 1 underneath. So this is down 3 and over 1. Okay, so you guys are going to try it now. I'm going to give you one. You're going to do the points 5, 4, and 1, -1, I mean, and 6. So take a moment, apply the steps that were done here, and I want you to tell me what the slope is. You can pause it and come back when you're ready to check. Okay. So let's see where we're at. So you found the slope. It should have been, so applying the steps here. Wait a minute. The slope, we'll go back to this. This is just a mini lesson. The slope then would have been 6 minus 4 over -1 minus 5. And you get 2. -1 minus 5 is -6, and that simplifies to -1/3. So the slope would have been -1/3. Okay, now we have to take it farther because we need to also know where the y-intercept is. So let's look at this next one. Same process, you've got 2 points from the line that you're given, right? You're going to apply it to find the slope. And then you're going to use substitution. You're going to plug in x and y, the values, and it doesn't matter which one. You could pick the first one or the second one. Just pick one of the points, substitute the values in. So where you see x, you're actually putting, well, let's just look over here. So here's our slope. So we have y, but wait, we know that there's a y. We know what it is, right? So let's pick this one. So that's what we're showing here. So 4 equals the slope. Remember, it's y equals slope times x. X is 3. This was a typo. You shouldn't have the x there still. And then plus b. So we're solving for b, right? We don't know the y-intercept. So this is now 4 equals 9/2 plus b. And if we need to solve for b, so we're going to subtract 9/2 from both sides. And this becomes 4 minus 9/2, right? But you can't do that until there's common denominators. So we're going to rewrite this. We'll double to get 1 to 2. So we're going to rewrite this as 8/2 minus 9/2. Okay, that equals -1/2. So what we have is y equals the slope, 3/2 x, and our y-intercept is -1/2.